Hello! Back again with another sleepy edition of Glastonbury Romance. Tossy Stickles was not the only person in the town that fine afternoon whose mind was preoccupied. Philip Crow, after an interview with Harry the chemist, looked at the clock in his study. Only 3:30. He'd got rid of that greedy dwarf in double quick time. What a funny-looking man, his face so round and smooth and his eyes so hungry for banknotes. He hurried out of the study, where he had been showing Mr. Stickles his own specimens of wiki-hole tin, and went down the passage. The drawing-room door was open. He looked in. How nice those frolics smelt. How well Tilly arranged flowers in a room. So different from those untidy wildflower bunches, that Aunt Elizabeth always left about. Dear old Tilly. He closed the door, thinking to himself, it must be very unpleasant in those countries where the rooms have no doors to shut. That's fair enough. He stood for a second in the hall, listening. The rich, misty autumn sunlight poured through the lozenge-shaped panes of mid-Victorian colored glass. Inset above the front door fell upon the hall table, throwing a rosy light upon the tray of calling cards that stood there, upon the top of which Emma, true daughter of Sly the shepherd, had placed the virgin card of Lady Rachel Zoyland, fell upon the stuffed pike, brought, like the famous picture of the poet Cowper's mother, out of Norfolk, and fell finally upon a leather-bound broadshaw with a brass paperweight laid upon it. Whew! No! There was not a sound in the house. It must be the servants' day out, and Emma must be lying down upstairs. His eyes fell by chance, perhaps because it was so rosy from that colored glass above the door, upon the Bradshaw, and upon the little brassy blind of St. Mark which kept it in its place. He sighed. A quick, little, deep-drawn sigh. Persephone had brought him that absurd little brass object from Venice. What a strange girl. What on earth had he done to offend her, to make her so cold to him? He had been tender, considerate, tactful. He had been everything they liked. He couldn't help making love to her when they slept in those places. Taunton, Bath, Exeter, Bristol. What else did she expect? Did she think men and women would lie quietly side by side like two girls? That was precisely as far as he could make it, what she did think. What on earth else had she turned against him? Why? Well, let her go, alone. That was his manifest destiny, to wrestle with this chaotic world alone, without the warm comfort of a girl's faithful sweetness. For the flicker of a second, as he stared at the rosy gleam and the slanting, dust-mote sunglide that led down to it, he thought that it would be nice, as he got older, if Tilly would consent to adopt his little Morgan daughter. But her mother would never give her up, and Tilly would never consent. Besides, what a handle to his enemies. He took down his gray felt hat and chose a stick from a half a dozen that stood there, huddling, as if for protection, in their painted stand around Tilly's big umbrella. He never bothered much about sticks. Who was it he'd come across in the last week who made such a fuss of his stick? I think you know, dear reader. That's right, it was Scallywag John. He'd met the scamp only the other day at Aunt Elizabeth, and, do what he couldn't keep his temper from the fellow. Well, he must hurry up now and get to the office. But he wished that rosy light on that brass thing hadn't made him think of that sweet waist and those boy's hips. He opened the door and walked with his quick, short steps down the drive and into the Wells Road. It didn't take him long. He had often timed it exactly, not more than a quarter of an hour, to get to his office. No, it would never have done to fly to the continent today, he thought, as he was greeted by a chorus of anxious appeals from his young men and saw the applicants for his attention waiting in his anteroom in the pile of letters come by the second post on his desk. He settled himself in his swivel chair in front of the big, familiar blotting pad, covered with neat calculations. He gave one quick glance out of the window at the well-known factory chimney. "Ha!" he said to himself. "There'll be some more of you, by fine boys, sprouting your smoke before Philip Crow is done for." It took him 3/4 of an hour to dictate his most important answers, and then another 20 minutes to deal with his two important visitors. Then there came a call for him to go to the telephone. "That'll be the chap I want," he thought. "That'll be my good Will." Will Zoyland indeed it was, and so pressing and crucial was that bastard's communication that there was a violent running to and fro in the office of the Crow's dye works. "No tea at home today," thought Philip, as he hurriedly set about dispatching the rest of the day's business. He dismissed all his local supplicants now, telling them to come again tomorrow, and he gave just 10 minutes apiece to a man from London and a man from Birmingham. "A busy cove, our gentleman seemed to be," said the London man to the Birmingham man as they went off together. "When does your train go?" "The 5 o'clock to Bristol? I'm going to take the Somerset and Dorset to Wareham, and catch the old 6:30 to town." "The little hole's going to look up, I shouldn't wonder," said the Birmingham man presently when they were halfway down Benedict Street. "It's a nice little place." "So long as this freak mayor they've elected," assented the other, "doesn't ruin things with his damned socialism. They tell me that the bloke's starting a regular commune down there. They'll be hoisting the red flag next. But they've got a tough customer to deal with, that's evident, in our friend Crow." Philip himself, later that afternoon, was walking rapidly from where he had left Zoyland to the exit out of Wookiehole Wood. "I'll start contracting at once over the tin," he thought. "I'll not draw in one bit with the new dye works business. I'll play 'em off against each other. If the tin does come out in good quantities, I'll begin the piece of road too straight away. If the Romans had a road there, I can have a road there." The good Will gets pretty excited. How his beard wagged. Philip's mind now ceased to endumbrate forth even the most blurred sentences. It ceased to evoke even those mysterious shorthand hieroglyphics, half word, half picture, that were so often used. In the orbic emanation from his body, projected like a moving nimbus round his figure as he moved, enormous images built themselves up, and then annihilating themselves as if by the mandate of some interior stage manager, built themselves up anew in other stranger shapes. His energy as he walked along with those quick, short, commander of men's steps that were so characteristic of him seemed to be simply limitless. He felt it pouring through him like some as yet unnamed magnetic fluid. He felt as if he were tapping some immense reservoir of power, stored up in those caverns he was leaving, power that had accumulated there for centuries and centuries, like the metallic deposit he would soon quarry out, and in the strength of which nothing would balk him, nothing could frustrate him. The curious thing was that as he gave himself up to this intoxicating feeling, he felt an excitement that was actually phallic. Nor was there anything unnatural in this. Both the two great forces pouring forth from the double-natured first cause possess the energy of sex. One is creative, the other destructive. One is good, the other evil. One loves, the other hates. But through both of them pours forth the magnetic energy that moves and disturbs the lethargy of matter. Both of them have abysmal levels in their being that transcend all that we as present know of the duality of life and death. There is no ultimate mystery. Such a phrase is meaningless, because the reality of being is forever changing under the primal and arbitrary will of the first cause. The mystery of mysteries is personality, a living person. And there is that in personality which is indeterminate, unaccountable, changing at every second. The Hindu philosophies that dream of the One, the eternal, and an ultimate behind the arbitrariness of personal will are deluded. They are in reality, although they talk of spirit, under the bondage of the idea of the body and under the bondage of the idea of physical matter as an ultimate. Yeah, I don't know if he understands Hinduism, but whatever. Apart from personality, apart from personal will, there is no such ultimate as matter. There is no such ultimate as spirits. Beyond life and beyond death, there is personality dominating both life and death to its own arbitrary and willful purpose. What mortals call sex is only a magnificent manifestation in human life and in animal and vegetable life of a certain spasm, a certain delicious shudder, a certain orgasm of purely psychic nature, which belongs to the personality of the first cause. There are human minds, and they find it easy to hypnotize the shallowly clever, who apply to the primordial mysteries of life and sex certain erudite names, and by this naming and by the noting of certain sequences, they think things are explained. Nothing is explained. The only causal energy in nature is the energy of the double-natured first cause and of the innumerable lesser personalities whose existence is revealed in the unrolling of time. And the ecstatic quiver of that great cosmic ripple we call sex runs through the whole universe and functions in every organism independent of external objects of desire. You got all that? Parthenogenesis, as Christian clairvoyants have long ago defined it, is a symbol of what the soul constantly achieves. So are the dragon's teeth sown by Cadmus, and the pebbles cast behind them by Deucalion and Pyrrha. The composers of fiction aim at an aesthetic vermicitude which seldom corresponds to the much more eccentric and chaotic dispositions of nature. Only rarely are such writers so torn and rent by the demon within them that they can add their own touch to the wave crest of real actuality as they foam up, bringing wreckage and sea tangs and living and dead ocean monsters and bloody spume and bottom silt into the rainbow spray. They intersperse their comic and their tragic in a manner quite different. So hard is it to throw off the clinging conventions of human tradition from the ghastly monotonies and sublime surprises that nature delights in. Okay. All through, all conscious feelings belonging to living organisms in a particular spot upon the earth's rondure mount up and radiate outward from such a spot, overtaking in their ascent the sound idola and the sight idola which accompany them. Philip was now pausing for a minute on the posh path that led to the little gate out of the wood. His hands were deep in his trouser pockets. He wore no hat. He carried no stick. His suit was the same suit of rough heather-colored tweed that he had worn in the spring at his aunt's tea party. What he could see of the sky above the trees was cloudy. The white mist rising from the Wookey Hole River that issued from the side of the wet green precipice below him soon lost itself in that peculiar Somersetshire blueness, which is neither air nor vapor, water nor cloud, but a phenomenon, an entity, unique to itself. Well, we got some heady stuff there. I didn't really catch all of it, but I don't think you need to. It's fine. It's just a bunch of metaphysical bullshit. So until next time, I'll see you in Glastonbury. Cheers.